Hi, I'm Spencer Dillard. I'm a GM with Fargate, and today I'm with Ray Cole, a distinguished engineer with Smartsheet, and I'm excited to talk about how Smartsheet's been using Fargate and serverless. Ray, great to have you.
Thanks, Spencer. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about your role in Smartsheet.
So yeah, Smartsheet is a growing work automation platform. We allow our customers to build their business processes and systems around how they do business, manage their data. We use Aurora and RDS very, very heavily, and we've just recently started moving very much into Fargate and serverless, so we're very excited about that. As for me, I tend to focus primarily on operations, availability, and scale.
Okay, so I know you all have been moving from on-prem into AWS. Love to understand a little bit more about what that's been like, what it's meant for you, what your journey's been.
Yeah, so when I started at Smartsheet, we were fully on-prem, which was unique for me. You know, I'd come from Amazon, so I was used to working with the cloud. We had a big push to get into the cloud. We had some outside motivators to try to move away from the on-prem stuff. But we primarily did a lift and shift. It was mainly just to try to get out of the data center as quickly as possible. Like the biggest problem with the data center was that, you know, if we had a large scaling event, it was very difficult to get hardware. It was long lead time. So being able, you know, we were growing business, being able to grow that scale quickly was a very important factor.
Yeah. I mean, as you've made this change, how has that been with your developers, with your internal people in the company to adjust to life in the cloud? What's that meant for you all?
Well, I can tell you that the engineers love it, right? So, you know, honestly, the big thing for the engineers is it really unlocks agility. You know, they can go and build things, you know, right out of the box. They have tons and tons of AWS services to choose from. And I think that, you know, one big challenge is getting our engineers to move quickly. And, you know, serverless does some of those things for you. So, you know, we really, really like working with that type of technology.
So, yeah, I mean, you bring up serverless. What are some of the things that drew you to trying to move more to serverless and away from managing infrastructure? What drove you to try to solve that?
You know, honestly, primarily it's the simplicity. Like, you know, a lot of large-scale systems are very, very complex, obviously. You know, you have a lot of decisions that you have to make. Things like, you know, how many file handles should I have? And serverless really takes a lot of those decisions away from the engineer, right? Like, we've got a bunch of smart people that are all sitting around talking about things from their past and things that are important to them. It makes it difficult to make decisions. So just having fewer decisions to make allows us to be more agile.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, something we say a lot, and you were here, you know, this is, you know, trying to make the right thing the easy thing, right? And, you know, do you feel like when you look at what serverless has meant, is it kind of addressing that for your team and making it easy to do the right thing?
Totally. Again, it's all about removing those decision points, right? Like, we can feel comfortable that, you know, all of the main decisions have been made with the best case in mind, right? Like, we got all these brilliant folks at AWS making these decisions for us, right? So we don't have to think about those things. And that really frees up our engineers to really focus on the problem itself, right? Like, what are the business aspects of this problem? Not like, you know, what version of libc should I use, right?
Which everybody loves to do.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah. So when you look at, you know, the serverless landscape, I know you've been using Fargate quite a bit. So I'd love to understand if there's anything about Fargate itself that has been impactful or has really, you know, helped your teams move faster, be more effective.
I think, again, it's about, you know, making the decisions for us. I believe that as far as Fargate goes, you know, recently there were some increases in the scaling and the size of the tasks you can have. That helped us a lot. Like, we've got a big, very inefficient, monolithic application. You know, there's a lot of legacy code. Smartsheet's been around for a long time, and there are some parts of the application that are less efficient than we would have liked. You know, it uses a lot of resources. So that really helped us move some of our workloads over to Fargate.
Okay, great. Speaking of some of the compute and your requirements there, the other area, I know we've talked about it, I've spent some time investing in Graviton and trying to kind of move to ARM systems. You can tell me a little bit about like why that was an effort for you all and how hard it's been. What's that experience been like?
Yeah, I would say the cost was the main driver for us to move to Graviton. Like I said, we do have a resource-intensive application. We had a lot of servers we were running, and there was a definite cost advantage using Graviton. I think one thing that surprised us is it took a lot more effort than we expected, right? Me as an engineer, I kind of expected where I would know where our compiled code lies and what our dependencies were, but there were a surprising number of dependencies that we had to address that had compiled components buried deep down in, and so it was more effort than we expected. I would tell teams that are going to do that, plan to take some time to examine your dependencies.
Were a lot of these in frameworks or in the languages themselves, or maybe there's some pointers that somebody out there can save a day or two if you answer the question of where you found some of these?
Yeah, well, so I think a big shocker for a lot of our engineers is there's a surprising amount of compiled code in Java libraries, right? And I think it was not necessarily intuitive that happened, but like I said, we've been around a long time. We've got a significant code base, so we pulled in a lot of dependencies. So we just had a very large surface area that we had to cover.
So is there anything with Graviton that has really improved your operations or your cost? What's the benefit been?
I don't have the exact numbers with me, but I want to say that it reduced the cost of some of our fleets by up to 50%. It was a big game changer. In the fleets where we had, we've got some areas of the system that are very, very large and other areas very small. And when you can take that one piece and just shrink a significant cost, right, with really very little effort once we had gone through dependencies, the rollout was simple.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Anything that, when you talk to people from other companies, or any advice you would give for as they plan moving to serverless, some of the things they should be thinking about, some of the lessons that you've learned you think could be helpful?
Yeah, I think that, I've seen a lot of engineers and teams focus on cost. Obviously, there is if I'm not managing the machines, there's going to be some amount of cost overhead, right? However, I think that, I tend to be largely reactionary. In most of our systems, cost is really not an issue, right? For the most part, there's a small number of systems where cost is going to be a big issue, but generally, we like to wait for that to be a problem. Yeah. I've seen teams, like a 5-person team, spending a day a week talking about cost when their AWS bill is $1,000 a month, right? It's that team is losing money by having the meeting, right? It's not the cost.
Yeah,
right?
That's fair. I think the balance is always understanding the magnitude and the scale and the effort to actually address it. So when you look at in this environment, lots of companies are talking about cost. Have you found it that you have the right level of control and flexibility to make adjustments where you do find higher costs?
Oh, certainly. I think that, with the serverless paradigm, we do have a lot of visibility into what's consuming our costs, what specific resources, that sort of thing. And thus far, we've had a lot of success, addressing those. We haven't really had to make dramatic architectural changes. Usually, it's something that we did not realize was happening. Right, we had one instance where our folks, we were going through NAT Gateway to talk to S3. Right, obviously we're wasting money there. Right,
yeah.
So.
As you all look at your costs and ways to optimize it, I'm curious to understand some of the opportunities you see and how serverless has made it easy to optimize your costs.
So I think one thing that's been super helpful has been just the observability and the ability to understand what's going on. So we got a tremendous amount of metrics and logging that we're getting out of serverless. We've got great visibility into what's going on in the system. I think that, expanding on that is super helpful, right? We're able to pinpoint exactly where the money's going, what services are sucking up all of that money. Sometimes it is a bit of a challenge as to understand why. It's been very rare, but overall, I would say that it's very easy to go in, understand where the money's going, and then make some small changes to really have a big impact, right?
Since you bring that one up, from the deployment model around serverless, especially when you're trying to deal with things like deploying to GovCloud, how has that freed up your developers from just a safety perspective?
Well, I think that a lot of our developers, and I think a lot of application engineers in general, security is not their expertise, right? That's why we have a security department, we have dedicated security engineers. I think that one thing that is super helpful is like a lot of engineers have to go outside of their domain in order to solve those security issues. And by not even having to deal with it, like it's one thing just to have to do the work, but to have to go and learn how to do the work, that takes even double or triple the amount of effort. So I think that's one thing that's been super helpful for us.
And I think that's what a lot of companies are finding is that it's not, the optimization is not making massive architectural changes. It's really taking the time to look at the data you have, being able to prioritize that, and then to make some decisions that you can put in action really quickly. So, it sounds like you've been able to quickly enact the changes that you've found and not have to spend a lot of time overanalyzing those.
Yeah, certainly.
Great. Thanks a lot for your time today, Ray. It was great to catch up with you. And thank you to everybody who joined in for AWS Serverless Innovation today. Really appreciate your time. Hope you learned something, and stay tuned for more information.